Thank you everyone, good afternoon. So I'll be talking on how we can model the presence or absence of carbon sinks in the oceans and how we can use it to predict climate well into the past or into the future. But first, what do we mean by carbon sinks? Carbon sinks are locations in the environment, be it on Earth or in the sea, which essentially absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So just like we have sinks, we'll have sources where we have emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And oceans form a major proportion of this, around 40% of the total sinks on Earth. And to understand how these things work, we first need to understand that transport of water across the ocean takes place by means of what's known as the global conveyor belt or the thermohaline circulation, which transports heat and salt either through deep water flows, in which case it's through temperature, density, and salinity gradients, or to surface currents, which is essentially driven by winds, and of course, warm water currents. So these play a crucial role in carbon sequestration, and we need to know how we can model this if we need to do anything with it, right? So what we try to address is whether these carbon sinks can be predicted, whether the spatial temporal location changes with time, and how does the varying temperature in the atmosphere affect this? Will it remain static? Will it keep changing with time? What happens? What's the stability of these systems? And lastly, how does freshwater flow act as a control parameter for the system? The hunch was that this is a crucial control parameter, and we'll show that it is. And using this, can we explain differences between paleoclimatic patterns and current day systems? Right. So how does the ocean look like? Essentially, you have an uppermost layer up to around 100 meters, which is susceptible to surface phenomena like winds and warm surface currents. Below this, you have something known as the pycnocline up to a depth of 1 kilometer, where you have a gradual salinity and temperature dependent density. Lastly, you have the very deep places where slower and only colder density driven currents predominate. Now, around the time we got this, we were thinking of this problem, we had a serendipitous event, in the sense I got a paper to review on a chemostat, and it struck me that we can model oceans as chemostats essentially. So what we did was we modeled each ocean as a separate box interconnected to each other, and the red lines you see are the surface currents, the blue dotted lines are the density driven deep flows. And what we have done is we have included certain surface currents, the predominant ones that are seen on Earth, these 4 currents, and deep water flows. And you can see the deep water flows are dependent upon temperature and salinity. And if you approximate the temperature be constant in the deeps, so we have only salinity driven flows. So we have written down a salinity equation for flows from, say, ocean I to ocean J. You have also the F's are freshwater currents, and we have approximated only the Amazon to be the predominant source because it transports more freshwater than all the other rivers in total. So that's the predominant freshwater source. You also have to take into account precipitation and evaporation over the oceans because that will affect the salinity of the ocean. And also we have included surface currents, the capital QIJ, the terms that you see here. So you have salinity equation. Next, you need to see how carbon dioxide that's absorbed into the ocean, how does it evolve? So when you have a very detailed marine carbon cycle that's there in general, of which the predominant terms are the carbonates and bicarbonates. But what we are interested in is the aqueous carbon dioxide that's dissolved in the water. And we're going to take it as a measure of how carbon dioxide essentially is absorbed by the oceans. Right. So what we do is we write down an equation for the change in aqueous carbon dioxide with time. That's the first equation there, which takes into account surface currents, freshwater flows, and deep currents. Then, of course, the byproducts of the carbon dioxide reacting with saline water, which is the second one. And lastly, we'd also make a correction for deep water sea flows where the aqueous carbon dioxide absorption changes because of temperature and density. So right, so we have one equation here, the second equation here, and the third salinity equation for one given box. We have 5 interconnected boxes, so we have 15 coupled differential equations that we have to solve. So we start off by looking at for initial conditions, we look at the carbon dioxide vapor pressure over the oceans for a given year. That's publicly available. And using these, we are able to solve the system numerically. So far, we have not talked essentially of temperature changing in the atmosphere. There's something called the Keeling curve, which is the rate at which carbon dioxide varies in the atmosphere with time. What we have done is we have put a linear fit for this Keeling curve. And further, we have used it in conjunction with the change in surface temperature with time, so that we have a measure of change of carbon dioxide with time and temperature over a period of time. Right. So using all of this, we are able to find out the values of the average carbon dioxide, the carbonate and other byproducts, and the salinity of the ocean for each box or for each ocean as a function of time. This is what we get. The first plot on the left shows the aqueous carbon dioxide evolving with time. The topmost curve is the curve for the Southern Ocean. And incidentally, the Southern Ocean does have experimentally the maximal carbon dioxide content. So our theory kind of captures that. Next, you have the South Atlantic and the North Atlantic Oceans, which again captures what is seen experimentally. And the least carbon dioxide content is in the Pacific Ocean, again borne out by what is seen in nature. Similarly, the most saline ocean is the North Atlantic. Again, that's what is seen in nature, followed by the South Atlantic, the Southern, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. So the simple box model seems to work very well, at least for making predictions of these things. Right. We have got these 15 coupled differential equations. How stable are they? What more information can we extract from this? So what we do is we do a simple linear stability analysis, obtain the fixed point. We were able to find one fixed point, and then find the eigenvalues, for which the eigenvalues, of course, will tell you how the fixed points are going to evolve. You will see here that amongst this myriad numbers, you have a set of 2 complex conjugate eigenvalues here. These correspond to the salinity for the South Atlantic and the Southern Oceans. And immediately it tells you, because these are complex conjugate eigenvalues, you're going to have oscillations in the salinity between the South Atlantic and the Southern Ocean. That's one prediction we get straight away from this. Right. Then we look at the basins of attraction for this system. So for example, on the right side, you have a basin of attraction for the aqueous carbon dioxide in the North Atlantic and Indian Ocean. And you can see it's a very symmetric structure, which indicates that there's a coupling between the North Atlantic and Indian Ocean. So any change in the North Atlantic will automatically get reflected in the Indian Ocean. That's one more prediction we can make straight away. And lastly, to look at the spatiotemporal evolution of the carbon dioxide content in each ocean, we are going to look at the convective or material derivatives of the carbon dioxide content and solve for each box to get an average value of the carbon dioxide. Having done that, we then transpose whatever numbers we get onto the map. And this is what we get for various years, 2003, 5, 7, 11. The lighter shades, the lighter blue shades that you see are the carbon sinks. The darker ones are the sources. Sources correspond to emission, sinks correspond to absorption. And wherever you have sinks, you're going to immediately see that the corresponding nearby landmass is going to see a fall in temperature. The left side is what has been published in a journal about what is measured experimentally. This is our prediction. And broadly, you see the patterns match. Now, that's an interesting thing. Using this, can you predict what happened years back? Say in the Miocene area, around, how much is it? Around 10 million years back. That was a time of climate change. And the point is, can we predict something there? I already told you that we had a hunch initially that the Amazon is going to be a major control parameter for the climate. And it so happens that during the Cretaceous period, the Amazon was not flowing into the Atlantic, but rather into the Pacific Ocean. So you're going to have a shift of freshwater flow into the Pacific rather than the North Atlantic. And if you do that, the left side is what we have today. Right side, if you're going to divert the flow into the Pacific, and immediately see that you have carbon sinks forming here, these light colored ones, and which indicates that you're going to have cooling in the contiguous land masses. And also a change in flow in the North Atlantic has caused a flip in sinks and sources, as you see in the Andaman Sea, which indicates a close connection between the North Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, as you would expect. So these are various things that we see. You have significant changes in Atlantic Pacific Ocean, changes of sinks into sources. And also what is seen in the geological record or paleogeological record about formation of ice sinks is also captured if you look at the Antarctic east of the Antarctic Peninsula. You have the sink formations here, which is indicating of cooling and ice shelf formation. The bottom one is for the Miocene era. And you see a simple box model predicts that as well. And on the whole, there was a cooler climate in the Western Europe during the Miocene period. Again, you capture that because of this area, which is the Canary Current. You see that corresponding landmass is going to cool down. Of course, what we see will depend upon the flow rates of the Amazon. Depending on that, our predictions would change. But of course, we have no way of measuring what happened millions of years back. So these are the principal features of our model. So the basic thing is we have a very simple box model, and we are able to predict quite a lot out of this. That's it. So any questions, please ask.
So one quick question.
You had these rates of transfer from one ocean to another, Kij, terms like Kij times Ci minus Cj. The Kijs themselves you take to be constants, right? But if there's substantial variation in the seas, would you have to worry about their dependencies on those?
No, we take average flow rates, so those are constant. But yes, if those change, things would change. On the whole, they remain more or less constant.
Because the seas themselves don't vary enormously,
no, Kj corresponds to the flow rate from ocean I into ocean J. On average, it's constant.
Okay.
So, in your pictures, there is a sort of a rectangular grid cell-like structure quite strongly visible.
The cell-like structure is because we put 5 by 5 degree grids.
Okay.
So the cell is a
that's an artifact of the
artifact.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's thank the speaker.